Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Lessons Learned, the dumbest thing I've ever done with money. I am Suzanne, the head coach at Grace Financial Coaching, and I finally have my friend Seth Connell on the show today. Super excited to talk to him finally. Seth is a successful financial coach. He's coached individuals and families in personal finances since 2018 using a method that takes people from debt to wealth. During that time, Seth was a little busy. He also went through law school, graduating in May of 2022. And upon receiving affirmative results, Seth will be admitted to practice in the state of Tennessee, focusing on estate planning and business formation and consulting. That's a lot, Seth. How are you today?
Looks like I'm going to be very busy. So
Yeah,
glad I finally had some time to come on here. I know we've been trying to do this for a while.
absolutely. Definitely. I usually joke around with people that I've been trying to get them on for a while. I've literally been trying to get Seth on for like years now at this point.
It's
So,
almost 2 years, something like that.
Laura, good morning, Laura. Laura says congrats.
Thank you, Laura. Appreciate it.
Yes, awesome. So, um, you have been coaching since 2018, and aside from the let's put the law school thing aside for now, who's like your ideal client? Who do you like helping the most, and who have you helped the most during your coaching?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I have kind of two specific types of people that I seem to work well with. One who I kind of am trying to set out intentionally, the other unintentionally. Uh, the ones who I set out intentionally are young married couples in the professional field. So healthcare, if they're in the financial world, if they're in any sort of professional occupation, I like to work with them because a lot of times those types of folks, there's this over complexity, this obsession with complex ideas and whatnot. But the thing is that, as Occam's razor's principle says, if there are two explanations for a given phenomenon, the simpler is likely the better explanation. So, and just because I've gone through a law program does not mean I like complexity. I hate complexity. And the best professors I had, federal judges, appellate litigators, they all said the best of the best when it comes to the legal profession, make things simple, concise, and clear. And when it comes to personal finance, same exact thing. Not complicated methodologies, not hyper intricate things, not hyper risky things. The basics, the foundational things will lead you to wealth. And that's what I like to work with, is helping those folks distill things down so that they understand it and they know exactly where they're going. And
Yeah,
then
and typically in those fields, not only is the person or the couple probably making a good amount of money, they've unfortunately probably been exposed to, and I'm not saying they all do this, but financial advisors, financial planners that are almost trying to make it more complicated, which is maddening.
Mhm. Yeah, and I've I've had some folks before where they bought products, whether it's certain types of investment funds or life insurance products, and they've had it for years, and every time they try to go to the advisor to explain it, they never get an answer. And that type of stuff drives me ballistic, because if you're going to entrust somebody with a given product to try and invest it and to either protect your money or make you money, you need to understand what it's going to do and how it functions. So if somebody's not telling you how something is going to function, run away. Go to somebody else, no matter how many people you have to talk to. Get somebody who's going to fully explain exactly how it works, who is transparent in their compensation process, and who you feel comfortable with. Especially you ladies. If you feel something in your gut, listen to it. And if you're married, tell your husband that you don't feel right about it. And it's important to make sure that he is coming along with you and it's not going to drag you into something that you don't feel comfortable with. Because odds are, if you feel something is not right, something is not right. So go with that gut intuition.
Yeah, definitely. I'm thinking this particular client I worked with for a full year, and I've met with them since then, to catch up with them to see how they're doing. And that's exactly what was happening, is that the husband was getting pulled in by a
Mhm.
friend of a friend into this, oh, whole life insurance, and we're going to set you guys up with a brokerage account. Well, what's it going to be invested in? Well, I don't know. He didn't tell me. He just said it was a brokerage account, and the wife was very wise she was very wise in hiring me, but she was very wise in the sense of, whoa, 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 whoa. I don't understand all of this. Let's get a third party in here, somebody who's not getting paid by our investments
Mhm.
and somebody who can advise us and say, hey, this, and honestly, half the stuff that the guy was selling them was actually decent stuff. We ended up employing a lot of it, but they weren't even at the stage when I first started meeting with them to even get that stuff going. So yes, if you can't explain it to a 5-year-old, if you can't explain it to yourself, if the person isn't trying to get you to understand, those are all really big red flags, and maybe you need to take a step back for sure.
Yep, exactly. So
Yeah.
young professionals and their families is who I'm trying to set out intentionally to work with. I'm specifically trying to work with more folks in the legal field, especially given that I have gone through that program. I understand what it's like, and I want to help come alongside attorneys so that they have financial freedom too. But unintentionally, and this is just kind of interesting, I seem to work with single and divorced women pretty well. And I think a part of what it is that a lot of times they've experienced financial stress and insecurity in their previous marriages. And the program that I talk about with them offers them the type of security that they're seeking after. I've got a good friend of ours, me and my wife, we went to undergrad with. She did her senior thesis on why women tend to vote in certain ways. And her
Mm.
thesis was that they're looking for financial security. And so this program that I teach, that we both teach here, it's something that offers that security, and it really resonates with them. So I found that to be an interesting thing among the people that I work with, and very effective with that demographic.
Yeah, for those entrepreneurs who are out there who are, B2C entrepreneurs, business to customer entrepreneurs, marketing people will tell you all the time, who's your ideal client? What's your niche? Who's your ideal client? And sometimes you start off with an ideal client and you end up with a completely different one.
Indeed, indeed.
But usually it's a nice, usually it makes sense. Like you said, the single and divorced women who are seeking that financial security, that makes a lot of sense. So good morning, Abby. How are you? And Laura enjoys your feedback there, Seth. Make it simple, concise, and clear, just like a good goal. Great point, Laura.
Indeed.
Love it. So, coaching since 2018, and on the side, you were doing this law school thing.
Oh,
So, while we're doing coaching and law school, focusing specifically on the estate planning side, what kind of drew you to that part of that area of becoming an attorney?
so it really just meshes very well with what I've already been doing, because estate planning is a part of having a good comprehensive financial plan. Because as a coach, we're working to help people build financial freedom, build wealth, build a legacy. We're not going to be on this earth forever, though. At some point, we're going to pass from this and go into eternity. And the thing is, the assets we've accumulated are going to have to pass to somebody. So it makes sense. It meshes perfectly to help people build wealth, to help them find that freedom, but also to have the plan in place that's going to adequately protect what they've built and make sure that what their wishes are with their estate are honored in who they send that off to. So with wills, powers of attorney, revocable living trusts, charitable trusts, all sorts of things like that, it goes hand in hand with what I've been doing already.
Yeah, no, and this is so important. A lot of people have a hard time talking about this. In my own nuclear family, we've both my parents have already passed away, in a very short period of time, right? Almost next to each other, and we had this issue within our own family. Now, luckily, both of my parents had wills, so anything that had been separated, or their individual IRAs and things like that, everything was taken care of. Nobody had a trust, but it ended up being fine for their level of what was being passed through to the kids. But what do you do with somebody who just emotionally has a hard time talking about it? That's kind of what I mean. And it's not so much talking about the money, it's having to talk to your loved ones about, hey, I'm going to die one day. I mean, some people just literally cannot have that conversation.
Yeah, it's a very difficult conversation to have. And my family, we've had to have it just in making our own estate plan. It's tricky because the thing is, we're confronting our own mortality, and it's important, as coach, or for me as attorney and advising folks, that's something that I have to take into account. That whenever I bring up that topic, that it's weighty for people, because we're confronting the fact that we are not eternal beings on this earth. We're not going to last here forever. And that's hard because, especially for younger folks, or even for folks who are in their 60s, 70s, 80s, we don't want to think about that idea. But the thing is, it's going to happen at some point. And the question is, Are we going to create a plan in place to smooth that process and to take some of the stress out of the grieving process for our loved ones? Or are we going to leave a mess behind on top of all that grief? Having this plan in place is one of the ways of saying that I love you and that I care about you. And I want to make sure that you're provided for and there's an orderly process so you know everything that's going to go on, so that in the midst of that grieving process, when there's a lot of cloudiness and fogginess and your judgment is off and you don't know what's going on for months at a time, that there's clarity, that everything's been planned for beforehand, and that you're going to have that reassurance that you're going to be taken care of instead of the stress and anxiety of unsurety about what comes next. So those are some of the things to talk about with folks when those conversations come up.
Yeah, I remember both my parents unfortunately passed away from illnesses. My mom had cancer, and one of the things that was originally difficult for her to talk about, and then as she was going through chemo and she was doing better, and her life did get extended from that. But it brought this sense of realization where it's like, hey, people don't just die in car accidents. Knock on wood, God forbid. You may have the opportunity one day to be like, oh man, I have a terminal illness and now I have time to put this in place. But to really show those loved ones, no matter what ends up happening to you, that you love them, is getting that stuff in place. Is just, you can't, sitting down and having that tough conversation, even with maybe one of your kids who can't even fathom you leaving the earth. Unfortunately, it's a tough conversation to have. It's a tough conversation to make that person have, but it's really, really important, especially from, even if you get everything in place with an attorney. One of the things I also found difficult was arrangements and stuff like that. And that if you can't have that really hard conversation with a loved one, it can be spelled out in the paperwork that you do.
Yep.
Yeah.
You can pre-plan a funeral. You can prepay for it. You can have your lots selected out. All sorts of different things to, again, take the stress of decision making off when that time comes. We never know when it's going to be. Sometimes, again, terminal illness, something like that happens, tragic situations. We're not always confronted with something like that, though. And we have to make sure that we prepare ourselves and our family members in the event something suddenly happens, because we don't always get the choice for when we leave. And this is hard to talk about. It is. At the same time, we have to talk about it to make sure that when our loved ones are still here and they have to press on, that they're going to be taken care of, and that they're not going to be overwhelmed by having to deal with the loss on top of the mess of things that have to be taken care of too. Hard conversation, but necessary. Confront it now, voluntarily, on your terms, versus being confronted with it involuntarily on that situation's terms. Lean into it, have a different dynamic.
Yeah, and not only just, to kind of wrap this up, but this isn't just for old people, guys. This isn't just for like, oh, I'm over 40 and my back hurts every time I wake up in the morning. Maybe I should get a will. If you have very strong convictions about how you want to be remembered and you're 18 years old, go get a basic will and have that stuff written down. You might not be passing on a giant 401k. Maybe you're 23 and it's your first job out of college and you've got $500 in that little 401k account with your job. But if you feel very strongly about how you want to be remembered, this is the best way to do it, for sure. Yeah. Awesome. So Seth, tell me about the dumbest thing you've ever done with money, because so far I know a little bit about you and I don't think you've done too much dumb stuff.
We haven't really had too much time to do a lot of quote unquote dumb stuff. I feel like I got caught with good financial practices and perspective early. At the same time, I in high school, I was, told the whole line, go to college, go to college, go to college. All sorts of college stuff in the news right now. We won't touch on that in this conversation here, but that's an issue. But I went to a 4-year institution, private institution, had good scholarships, thankfully, but I still had to finance a good part of it. It was like $16,000 or so that I took out, which isn't all that much, but at the same time, it's still debt. And with the way that it compounds, it can still grow or not get paid off very much depending on the plan that you choose. So graduated in 2016. My wife and I were dating at the time. And, I decided it's like, all right, maybe I should look into this. I found The Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey, decided to read it, said, there's a lot of good stuff in here. I started using the envelope system, but didn't really go into this head on. I could have paid that all off in a year before we got married. We got married on May 6th, 2017. and graduated May 7th, 2016. So those two dates always confuse me. And then for law school, I graduated on May 7th, 2016 or 2022. So adding 3 dates there to confuse myself with. So I always get a little flack from that for forgetting the date exactly. But yeah, from undergrad, 16,000 in debt. It's like, yeah, I'll start to go after this. Basically just making minimum payments, maybe a little more here and there, but whatever. Got married in May of 2017 and said, all right, maybe it's time to grow up here. So we decided, all right, we're going to press into this a little bit further. Then come September, there was an unfortunate situation where my car got destroyed by a 16-year-old with no driver's license. And I think I've told you about that before. Basically, I was parked at my in-laws, and it was 1 o'clock in the morning. Bam, head on collision, probably 55 miles an hour in a residential area. Crazy situation. But the thing is, with the insurance payout and with everything that we got from it, we decided to finance a car for me and added like another $10,000 on top of it. So $27,000 in debt total is basically what we have here. A couple months later, after Thanksgiving, the Monday after Thanksgiving, 2017, I get notified that I've been let go from my job because of just the way that it was going. I was in new media at the time. Facebook was changing things with the algorithm and reducing web traffic, which means reduced advertising revenue. I kind of saw it coming, so I wasn't too surprised, but still, it was kind of a culture shock. And we lost about 2/3 of our household income with that. It was a huge income loss. We still had the debt though, and it was just like, oh, what do we do here? So we spent the next 6 months or so, 6-7 months, where I was underemployed. I was doing Instacart and Lyft and miscellaneous writing jobs, some digital marketing, which I had no idea what I was doing. Somebody brought me on and was kind of mentoring me in that. But the thing was, even in that time where I was underemployed and we had a greatly reduced household income from what we had before, we just pressed into it. We decided to press into the debt, get really aggressive. We went super, super intense, gave up almost everything extra discretionary, and we paid off more than we were before. We were doing like $500-$600 a month before my job loss. Then we went up to like $1,100, $1,200, $1,300 a month because we really just sacrificed so deeply to make it happen. And it was a hell of a time. It was just like no to everything. We just got to pay this off as quickly as possible. It was just like I was done with it. Both of us were. And then by June of 2018, there it was, the last student loan payment done. I still have that email saved. We'll always keep that on file. So since then, we've been debt free for 4 years. And the thing is here, we got to that point. We became debt free early on. But the thing is that the financing of the car and the taking out of the student loans, that's the type of financial foundation that we had at that point in time. And then my job loss came along, and we had stress testing of the house that we had built. And the stress testing showed that we did not have a solid foundation because we had the big car payment and we had the student loan payments, and that stress on there weighed on us very heavily. But we took that stress and used it to power us through to get rid of it. But the thing is that job losses, apparently the world being shut down, those things happen, apparently. And the thing is that the choices we've made going into those situations are determinative of how we will handle it. We can choose two different types of things. We can choose how we respond to the world's happenings, but also how we prepare for them. At that time, we were not super prepared. But later on, years later, we were prepared for these things. I had another job layoff in February of 2018. After we had become debt free, I had a different job, different situation. But when I was let go, this is after I started my coaching practice, it was just kind of, well, it's kind of unfortunate, but we have an emergency fund. I have my coaching business. We don't have any debt. We're able to handle it much better. So it was stark contrast between 2017 and 2018 when we made those different choices, or February 2019, I should say, because that was the year I started law school. It was 6 months later.
Yeah. So let's circle back to the beginning of our conversation 20 minutes ago. You guys heard Seth say that after the car and the job loss, they became debt free. He went to law school after that. Notice he didn't say anything about taking on student loans. So, Seth, is it possible to go to law school debt free?
Well, if you think that I'm real, it's possible. Unless I'm just a figment of your imagination, a hologram or something. But yes, that's what we did. Part of our conversation here is talking about if I had the chance to do it over again, if I would do anything differently. And the answer is yes. And we basically did do it differently because, chapter one, opportunity one, financed the degree, got exposed for what type of situation that presents for us. And then we had another opportunity to go into higher education again. It was a difficult decision to go back to school after being in the workforce for about 3 years, but it was something I felt called to do. But we had the conviction that debt is a thief, that is something that steals our ability to have financial freedom. And according to our worldview and what the Bible says, that it's something that is not good for us. So we set out, we had this goal, go to law school 100% debt free. It's a lot of work, a lot of preparation work, applying for scholarships, applying to different schools, all sorts of different things. I had a decent scholarship from where I went to law school. It wasn't enough to cover everything, so we still had to foot a significant amount of the bill. I applied for a bunch of outside scholarships. I grew my coaching practice, and over 3 years, we made it happen. So we made the decision that we were going to do this completely debt-free. It took a lot of diligence, a lot of sacrifice in the short term, but it's been so worth it. Graduating debt-free when a lot of my classmates and classmates from other schools have $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 in debt, and we don't have that. We have options. We have flexibility. We can do things that we want to do here. So yes, we had the opportunity to do it in a different way, and we chose to do it, and it was worth every single sacrifice that we've made, and this is going to be paying dividends for many years to come.
So I actually interviewed Seth's wife, Olivia, in an earlier episode, and I asked her what she was the saddest about having to give up during that time period. And she said, she took her second. She goes, I really like nice handbags. And I was like, girl, I am with you. And so, Seth, what was the hardest thing for you to give up during that time?
Oh, I would tell this to a number of folks. I'd say this all the time. I love my coaching business. I love doing it. Being in a law program full time, I was very, very limited in what I could do. I wanted to do all sorts of programs. I wanted to do workshops. I wanted to do all sorts of different things, build more of my nurture my professional relationships. But it was really, really hard to do that in law school. And that was one of the things that really frustrated me, was that I was not able to press more into my coaching business during that, because it's, a light week in law school is like 60 hours a week. So you're working 6-7 days a week, and then I'm throwing in a coaching business on top of that. So I was really limited in what I can do. So that's very unusual, somebody saying, oh, I wish I could work more, but but this is just really fun. I love what I do, and I wish I was able to do that more during law school, but all things for a season, done with all that now, and pressing into working with more folks, growing business, and serving more people. So took a while, but finally there.
Right. Absolutely. And you have the flexibility right now to not be running out of the door begging for a paralegal job like some of your colleagues might be doing while you await the results of a bar exam or something to that effect. You have the ability, you guys don't have $130,000 in loans sitting above your head. And you have that ability to grow the coaching practice. And I think Laura really sums this up well. It's amazing what you can do when you and your spouse are on the same page.
Yeah, amen to that. It was definitely a team effort. This is joint. This is both of us. My wife Olivia, she'd always say it's amazing what I've done, but I was always telling her, it's like, no, we've done this together, and we have had God's provision guiding us in all this. So I want to give her a lot of the credit too for being the one who is the breadwinner of the household. She's been the breadwinner most of our marriage up until now. So that's not a big issue for me. At the same time, she's made sacrifices herself. She just declined the handbags. So, we had to decline doing a lot of things. But now for the rest of our lives, we have a lot more freedom available for where we can say yes for these things. We said no for a season so that we can say yes for a lifetime.
Yeah. Yeah. And without giving away your beautiful wife's age, Seth, how old are you guys?
We are both 28. We are 19 days apart.
There you go. I'm sure she's 19 days younger.
Yes, she is.
So there you go, guys. 28 years old, sacrificed like crazy, and they didn't die. As a matter of fact, you guys have come out on top. I mean, you are heads and tails and shoulders above your colleagues in this area. And that's going to really, really, really be clear when you're 38, and it's going to be really even more clear when you're 48. It's going to be super clear when you're 58 and your own kids are going to college. And so I really commend you guys. Nice job. So, all right, guys, another episode in the books. And if you tuned in late and didn't hear the first half of Seth's story, please check out the replay on YouTube tomorrow. And Seth, thanks again for joining us. And I hope everybody will come back next week for another episode of Lessons Learned, the dumbest thing I've ever done with money. Thanks again, Seth.
Thanks, Suzanne. Good to be here.